I'd like you to grade what the Vikings have done in free agency, and it's not over yet. You still have more free agents out there, and there could be more moves to come. But grade what the Vikings have done in free agency, but grade it on the curve of the cap space that they had and what was actually available out there for them to try and improve themselves on the free agent market. Grade what the Vikings have done in free agency with those two things on the curve. 651-646-8255 or tweet us at Score North and get in on Purple Daily. Judd, what grade would you give the Vikings given those considerations?
If I had to give a grade right now, I would give them a C-. Now, in fairness, if you allowed me this, I would give them an incomplete because free agency is not done yet. And for teams that often don't have lots of room, this, as you know, is an evolving process that will go for a few more weeks at least.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the fairest grade that I could possibly give them would be an incomplete. But if you told me right now I had to grade it, I would give it a C- based on this. I don't understand from a cap standpoint what they're doing. They've got to create more room. They don't have room. There are some people with that team that I'm sure are thrilled that Anthony Barr is back. And Anthony Barr, if used properly, could be a very good player. But the moment he came back, bringing Griffen back became darn near impossible, and yet they did it. And so I'm not even broaching the subject of they should have signed this guy or that guy. I am going after this from the standpoint of how are you going to create cap room? And in fairness, as of right now, you still have not addressed what was your greatest need and weakness, O-line. Nick Easton is now gone. He took the Saints offer last night and signed. And so I'm not even going to give you a list of names and say, because, and there are a lot of guys who went in that first wave who probably A, got paid too much, and B, that the Vikings simply could not have been in on even if they wanted. But just as far as a strategic standpoint of what they're doing, I'm very confused. And you would have thought that they would have defensively drawn the line at some point. They did not. So I think it's very fair. If I have to give them a grade, C- bordering on a D+.
A C- D+ for Judd for your Minnesota Vikings so far in free agency. How about you? Give us a call, 651-646, or tweet us at SKOR North. Manny, is that fair? Is a C+ fair for the Vikings? C-. I'm sorry. So fair for the Vikings in free agency?
I'd probably give them, probably a solid C. To piggyback off of Judd's point, I'm just not sure. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know if typically the Vikings have always had a plan going into free agency and the offseason. And, sometimes those plans might change if, obviously they went into 2016 with a big plan for, Teddy Bridgewater was going to take that next step into being a legit starting quarterback in the league. And then he got hurt and then the plans changed and they had to give up a first round pick at the last minute for Sam Bradford. Those things happen, but this just doesn't, with the two moves that they've made in bringing back Barr and restructuring with Griffen, both of those moves to me, and they might work out for them. We'll see. We'll find out in 2019. But they both just seem like really panic moves to me, especially the Everson Griffen thing. Like it just felt to me like they, we can't leave. We can't lose them. We can't lose them. We can't lose them. We got to do whatever we can to keep them here. We'll restructure. And then they didn't. It seems to me like they didn't really take how much cap space they had into account. They just wanted to bring, make sure that they kept the entire defense intact. And I don't know. We'll see how it works. But I just have my doubts that this is the right way for them to go.
Well, Barr was gone. Barr was everybody accepted it. And so right there, it frees up quite a bit of room. And then he got cold feet. And instead of them saying, hold on a second here, this doesn't necessarily fit into the plans that we had because we came to the conclusion, rightfully so, that he was going to walk. He then came back and said, I was throwing up last night and crying and I'd like to come back. And I think Zim said, of course you can come back. And now, as good as he might be, it throws a monkey wrench into the entire thing. But at that point, then the solution is Griffen can't come back. And he did. And the one thing that I give this franchise credit for doing for a long time now is in free agency, it's always seemed like they had a very coherent plan and stuck to it. And I can tell you almost 1,000% that didn't happen this time because Barr elected to try to come back and they allowed it. And therefore now you're sitting there with almost zero cap room, what, $6 million approximately, Ramie? And you're in a situation now where you have no choice. You've got to do something. Like, this is not all right, this isn't what we expected, but we'll stand pat now. You've got to have enough to sign your draft picks. You've got to go get some help. You got to do something for the O-line along the way as well. But what's the plan? Nobody knows. And the scary thing about this is, do the Vikings know? I don't know.
See, and Manny says it was a panic move to go out and re-sign Barr the way that they did, or get Everson, Griffen. Yeah. And you, Judd, say that, Anthony Barr feeling physically ill because he was about to go and play for another team for the first time in his NFL career sort of landed him back in their laps. I'm not saying that there's not truth to what you guys are saying, but rather than terming it a panic move, I think it's smart leadership that when new information presents itself or when circumstances change, that you change course. And I think what the Vikings were thinking last year was that with the signing of Kirk Cousins, our offense should take a certain amount of steps that any year from now, if we lose an Anthony Barr, we lose an Everson Griffen, that we should be able to make up for that. And also, we have a nice little lead on the rest of the division here. So I think that a year ago, you're right, Judd, that they were thinking, yeah, we can let Anthony Barr walk in a year. And then the division changed and the offense didn't take the steps that they thought it would. So they changed course and decided to bring Anthony Barr back. And I don't really fault them for that. I would have asked Everson Griffen to take more of a pay cut than what they did. I don't know if that was something that he was or wasn't willing to do, if they broached that, if this was a number where they sort of met in the middle. We don't know how those negotiations went, but I think Everson Griffen, for the production that you got for him last year and being 31 years old, even the restructured $8 million price tag or something in that range is probably a little bit too much for Everson Griffen. So I agree with bringing back Anthony Barr. I don't necessarily agree with bringing back Everson Griffen at the price that they did. In giving out this grade, and again, doing it on the curve of A, the cap space that they had left, and B, what was available out there to make them better. And you can get in on the show, 651-646-8255, or tweet us at Score North. There are three aspects to grading a team and how they do in free agency. One is your own players who you bring back. Two is players from the outside who you bring in. And then three is how you handle the money that you have under the cap. And when it comes to the money, I'll start there, Judd. I can't agree with you more that they should have, and maybe they still are doing more to free up some money. But this is a process that should have started a long time ago to make sure that this money was there when free agency opened. Why Trey Waynes or Xavier Rhodes, one of those two, has not been traded to this point. And it looks like it's probably Trey Waynes if they're going to trade anybody at this point. Why that hasn't happened, I don't know. And maybe they're just waiting for the right offer. Maybe they have no interest in trading one of those two guys because, as you've pointed out often, it doesn't seem like Mike Zimmer really wants to part with any of his defensive players, especially his veteran defensive players. So, and also, I still don't understand if they haven't approached Kyle Rudolph about a restructure, why they haven't approached Kyle Rudolph about a restructure, because he's essentially said, I don't know why they haven't approached me about a restructure. And yet it still hasn't happened. So in the area of freeing up money to work in free agency, I got to give them a D, and it's a borderline F, because I think that there are moves that can be made there to free up some cap space.
But there might be more to come
that they have not made. Right.
That's the fair thing.
Right. But we're only grading them to this point.
Yeah.
And so far, they've done very little, if anything, to they freed up $2 million in cap space
by
restructuring Griffen.
I don't know this for sure, but it feels like the Barr thing was a curveball that they took advantage of, but then they didn't know how to adjust to the pitch from there. So, Barr comes back. Okay, he's going to come back. He's going to take less. Nobody's saying don't do that. But once that happens, don't you have to adjust? Don't you have to go to Kyle then and Griffen and tell Griffen, sorry, but you're just gone. We're cutting you, and go to Kyle and say you're going to restructure. And if Kyle is right, his theory is that they did go to Kyle and that Kyle said no. But it's at that point in time where you got to tell Kyle, okay, Kyle, the answer is not no. The answer is we're going to do something, or we will cut you and we will replace you, because that cap hit and that available cash there is too much. And I would be banking on the fact that with Rudolph, if you went to him and said, all right, you want to play chicken, we'll play chicken. You love it here. You're ingrained here. You love playing here. You've made it very clear it's your desire. You're going to play by our rules or not play here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that game of chicken, if you're the Vikings, you win.